But the symbol that I use to maybe just show excitement. I think I gave this example in the debriefing on Thursday about the evangelist in Latin America that wanted to get the crowd excited. Give me a J, give me an E, Jesus. And well, this symbol is like a cursing symbol. It's like giving somebody the finger, And so when they see that symbol, they feel like they're being evaluated. In other words, it's saying, I'm slandering you. It's like I'm holding you the zipper card, And so there was no intention to evaluate people. He was just trying to create an emotional message. But the way it was interpreted, because the nature of the symbol is that he is evaluating us. He's judging us. He's cursing us. You see what I mean? And so you're always sending 3 messages all the time. It's a bit more like teacher-student, or parent-child, or husband-wife. Husband-wife is not so much about status. His status is more about male-female. But husband-wife, there are responsibilities that you grow up understanding. These are the responsibilities of a wife role, or these are the responsibility of a husband's role. And so communication is affected by roles and status. So these are the kinds of things that you think about when you're trying to take apart what happened. Something just happened, the person got mad at you for doing something, you think, what did I do? There's a whole list of things you could have done. And it's part of it is learning, because the more you understand this, the more likely you are to think, remember and think about what you did, kind of walk through it and you go, oh, and all of a sudden you can see what it might be. Now, you might be wrong, but you might be right too. Because just if you have the ideas of the possibilities, it can help you analyze what you did wrong. It has to do with intonation, the way you put the words together, positive or negative like that. You see, every culture has these subtleties to it. And you just want people to mean what they say. Like the Frenchman on the ocean liner. At dinner he said, you English people, you don't, I can't do a French accent, okay, forgive me. You English people, you never mean what you say. And his person at the table said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I was on the lower deck and I heard a voice of an Englishman on the upper deck, look out! So I looked out and he got sick all over me. Oh. So look out. What does look out mean? Well, it can mean either kijk out, or it means kijk out, The verbal symbol systems are the most obvious. And so I'm using American English, and it's American English because my pronunciation is not British. Or South African, Australian, or, I mean, there's different kinds of English. And there's African English, or West African English, there's South African English, there's Indian English, there's Indian English, and there's, Pakistani English, and there's so many different, look at the computer, they have all different English languages, and it's not just about pronunciation, it's also about use of words. And so you can have, I remember this guy that, this American couple went to Australia, and they arrived at about 5:30 in the evening. And so their host said, would you like to join us for tea? And they said, no, we'll wait for supper. They had a long wait. And then they didn't get much to eat. About 9 o'clock, there was a knock on the door, and here's a little sandwich, Because tea is the word for dinner. Supper is the word for a snack that's served just before you go to bed. And so, verbal symbol systems can vary, even, as Winston Churchill said, English and Americans are two people separated by a common language. is sounds. Now, in a Muslim culture, I've had YWAM teams go and they talk about, oh, it's so oppressive. You know, you hear this, Allahu Akbar, Allah. You know, it was so oppressive. And then you get a Moroccan coming to Holland. It's so oppressive. You know, every 15 minutes, bong, 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 bong. You know, what's more oppressive, a human voice or bells?
Bells.
You know, yeah.
Every 15 minutes.
Yeah. They're trying to drive us crazy. You see, but it's like the sounds have meaning. You know, it's not just about the sound itself, it's associated with something. And so we have grown up in Europe through years of bells being associated with time changes or with, you know, call to prayer. Whereas Muslims have grown up, it's always a human voice, you see. And so, but if you're not used to that, and you're not used to the way it moves, it's oppressive. So audio has to do with sounds, and different sounds can have meaning. Like in some cultures, you know, everybody's honking the horn, you know. Honk, 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 honk. You know, the whole place is full of noise. In Holland, it's like people come to Holland, they can't believe it. You know, there's a truck sitting in the middle of the road, and people just wait for about 5 minutes. Then they honk. But it's like that there's this reluctance to fill the space, you know, to fill people's audio space with noise.
Well, that's the bike bell.
Yeah,
yes, no problem.
But normally most people won't go ring, 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 ring. You know, they'll do it once.
Only when it's necessary.
Only when it's really necessary. But I had a guy from South Africa. Every time he was like, ring, 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 ring. You know, it was like he was overdoing it because he was going on the principle, the more noise, the more I'm sending the message. Whereas even the trams here have a bell sound, you know, and the bell is like a bicycle, you know. So sounds carry messages. It's about something that happened in Africa here. Let's see. It tells about a health worker that wanted to teach people about the dangers of the malaria-carrying mosquito and how a simple mosquito net would be most effective deterrent. He made a mock-up of a mosquito large enough, a picture of a mosquito large enough, so that people could see what he was illustrating. Several months later, he returned to the village and discovered that people had not been using mosquito nets at all. When he questioned them, one villager replied, "Oh, we don't have mosquitoes as big as the one you showed us." Let's see, I was trying to think it here. He gives this example. A Japanese asks an American passenger, this is Heathrow Airport, okay, asks a passenger whether Heathrow has a luggage trolley. As it happens, this service is not only first class, but it's free. And so the American goes, you know, okay. And but the Japanese, to Japanese, this signifies money. In other words, it's going to cost you something. You know, whereas for the Frenchman, it can mean that it's not, well, anyway, so he does that. The Tunisian who's looking at him thinks the American is telling the Japanese that he's a worthless rogue and he's going to kill him. And meanwhile, a Frenchman who's just read a British Airways advertisement, he sees the guy doing it and he says, you know what? This airport costs the British taxpayers nothing. Zero. Unfortunately, at the time he is glancing at a Colombian who is enjoying a fine Burgundy wine with his steak. The Colombian, enraged by the deadly obscenity, probably means you're gay, assumes that it's directed at him, and he chokes on his wine and catches at his nose with his finger and thumb. This appalls the Syrian next to him, who thinks the Colombian is telling him to go to hell.